Hey everyone, Tactics here with my second last advanced route walkthrough for Season 4, where this time we're going to be taking a look at a plus 17 Brackenhide Hollow, which is actually very, very messy. So I'll talk you through the pulls, kind of the mistakes we made and how you can not make those same mistakes, as well as just other interesting pieces of tech like spots your group can actually stand in to avoid the very dangerous Lasher bleeds in the middle area of the dungeon entirely. This is going to be a pretty difficult route to execute, so I don't recommend it for pug groups. Instead, it's more targeted towards coordinated groups and players looking to push for the 0.1% title. I'll also link MDT routes for fortified and tyrannical variations. They're slightly different here and there down in the description below, and I will try and point out those route variations as we go. And one of them is actually the very first pull, so let's get into it here. We're off the start. You can see our druid has kind of swam under, and he's going to go open this cage when we pull this pack just to get a head start on that. And we're going to hug the left here, grab this bone crusher, avoid this hunter. A variation on Tyran, if you need a little bit more count in your route in general, is you can sleepwalk this hyena up this way, and it's not actually attached to this hunter. So you basically get this hyena for free in this pull. But we're not going to do that in this route. We don't need the count. Though I do actually think it's a very good strategy. And we're basically going to run up straight to this hunter here and grab all these mobs as well. And like I said, that our druid is behind us, opening that cage, not in combat. What I think I could have done also is just stepped back slightly with this hunter just to give us a little bit more room, because these mobs are going to start running in fear at low health. And so if I pulled this back a little bit, it would have made that a little bit easier. But I think we're so fine at the end of this. But something to keep in mind for positioning here. And now that this pack is grouped, we're basically just keeping we have a kick assigned to each of the 2 war scourges in this pull, and then we also have everyone else and my silent sigils on the mystic here to prevent those random target casts from going off. Outside of the kicks, there is just the traps that are going out that we need to make sure we're avoiding, and then just a stop rotation on the vicious claw mangles here, and just pretty straightforward here, nothing too crazy. The claw mangles do tend to sync up decently as well in this pull, because a lot of them are pulled at near the same time, and so it's not the end of the world here, and we're just kind of rotating through kind of what we have in terms of stops, both in sigils and other stops like the mage stop fear. You saw the in-cap roar just go right there. And then again, the 2 kicks, range kicks assigned to the war scourges, where everyone else is just kicking into the actual mystic itself. I think we had death of the trap there. Still need to be careful of those throwing out. There is only 1 hunter in this pool, but he does throw out traps decently often. And you can see again, the mob's starting to run away now. Just be careful of kind of where you're positioned. You could have been a little bit higher here to make them a little bit easier, but we have stuns and stuff near the end of the pull here, and we end up getting everything down without anything extra pulling, which is nice. Another pull variation here, like I said, is there's these 2 mobs right here, a bone crusher and one of the claw mangle guys, and you can add them to this first pull as well, along with that hyena, and that's actually in the tyrannical variation of this pull. So that's something you can do there right up here. And we go pull this. I actually hate this pull. It's not going to be in my recommended route. There's basically, you can do this pull plus adding a couple mobs to some various other pulls down the line in this route, and that lets you cut out a pull in Stinkbreath that we were doing on Fortified. On Tyrannical, we don't do either of these things. We just make every pull in the middle of the dungeon a little bit bigger and stuff like that. But on Fortified, we've been pulling this. I am cutting this out of the route, though. I don't really like it. I go into this with like no silent sigils, and we need to kick on the Decay Speaker's big cast. We need to kick on the War Scourge big cast. And then we need all spare kicks on the Mystic, and there's no sigils, and there's like, we're low on stops now as well. It's just, I don't like this pull at all, so I'm going to recommend you cut it out. And what instead you'll do is you'll just Mind Soothe this pack, and you'll just have anyone but the priest go around and open this cage, because Mind Soothe alone is enough. And so what you do instead here is the priest would just Mind Soothe, and the priest would run over here, and they'd get this cage while that was happening. And then after they get this cage, they'd run up and they'd fade and Mind Soothe their way through, and they'd get the cage up north here, which I'll show you in a second. And there would be no other pull in this area. You would skip this pack entirely. And then you'd go over here. And what you do to get this cage is the Demon Hunter would have a Misery, and they would just Misery this pack and run through it to get aggro, and then someone else would open the cage, and then they would meld off the pack. This is a little risky what we're doing here. Basically, I think we inch forward. Yeah, you can inch forward. These mobs pad a little bit, so it can be a little scary to do this. So that's why I recommend just miserying the demon hunter gets aggro and runs over here, and then someone else opens the cage, and then everyone's behind you. You meld it off. That's what I recommend. And at the same time, while this is happening, your priest would be soothing and fading to get this, and they would walk their way through, and they would soothe, and they would fade and they would get this one as well. And it'd be super fast, and you'd be done. I think what happened here, we actually had a bug here. So one of the cages we opened, and it counted as being opened, but the Tuskar didn't leave the cage, so it didn't count as them being freed. So we sitting around here trying to figure out what the heck happened to our cages for a while, and then we end up, he goes back, he's like, no, this cage is open, but the guy's still stuck in that cage. So instead, we sit around here for like 2 minutes, waiting. He's just gonna fade and soothe over there, and we're just like, okay, well, that's what happened there. So usually that doesn't happen, but you know, if that ever does happen, your priest can soothe and fade and get this cage as well. So something to keep in mind. Just weird bug. I actually haven't seen that bug before, but it can happen. So we're gonna soothe and sleepwalk to get past here. You can also cage this guy. That also works. You don't need sleepwalk. And we can just walk by into the boss room. And now we get to fight the boss. Kicks here. We basically just have a standard kick rotation where we're calling kicks. We never kick the heal, and we never kick if the bolt is targeting the tank. That is the 2 rules. And with that, we're able to get every single kick with, you know, a melee kick. I guess we have 2 melee kicks in this dungeon. We do have the druid kick in this dungeon, and the other range kick. So that's how we do that. In terms of dealing with the heal, it always goes on the lowest target member. So because we're focusing Trick Totem on this boss fight, it'll go on Trick Totem, and that means that your mage or your priest can just purge it and get rid of it instantly. The initial heal is not much, but you don't want the hot to be there for the whole duration, right? So you just want to purge it, and that saves you a kick. And from there, we're just kicking. And then once Trick Totem is dead, we chain in Trash. And that's why we focus Trick Totem first, because it's those kicks. We need the kicks on Trick Totem, and that frees up kicks to do the Trash is what killing Trick Totem does. And also just makes the fight a little bit easier, because the Wombo combo is Trick Totem bolting someone with like anything else happening, like Gash Tooth, focusing mobs, and that's what can kill you. So you just kill Trick Totem, and that opens up your kicks and makes the fight safer. So we're cutting over this way, killing Trick Totem, and I'm going to go leap over and get these mobs. You need to be careful when you have these mobs when Gash Tooth puts out this debuff. So make sure healers, you like insta dispel the tank. I'm not sure. I might stun here as well. Not quite, no. So just be aware. I stun out of it before these mobs get too far, and I got dispelled very, very quickly. So be aware of that, because it's very, very important. You can get, basically, if you have that debuff on you, they will just run to the nearest target. So everyone be careful of that. Otherwise, though, I think we start putting damage now into the big War Scourge, because it's the highest health mob by far, especially on fortified weeks. It's going to be very high health. So we don't really care too much about Hackclaw and Gash Tooth health anymore. We're just killing the War Scourge, and we kill this pack pretty evenly. Get the pot here. And now this is where you start getting into the areas of the map where you can stand on things that maybe you shouldn't be able to stand on to avoid the bleeds, because you know path available them. So to start, we're doing a big pull here. This is a pretty standard pull. Getting all the slimes, a couple trees here, and we're moving up and we're getting the big tree. And then these 2 packs on the edge as well. I open up a spot for the team to run through, and then I'm going to go make sure I don't die, and then grab the other pack there. And they're all jumping up on this rock, and this rock is basically a no path available zone. So they're going to be safe up there. They're going to be safe far enough away from the frontal. I'm going to try and get any of these lashers to see if the lashers walk up this way, as you saw this one, then they can bleed. So just need to watch some of these new lasher spawns and try and pick them up before they run up there. But otherwise, if they're down here, they actually will not be bleeding. And again, so yeah, just trying my best here on these new spawns to make sure I get aggro, because they will not be casting their bleeds from down here. This is a neat spot. There's also another spot, I think I can back up and show you guys, up by this tree on the left here. This guy, there's these pillars over here, and there's a spot where, both here and later on actually, where you can get up on the tallest pillar of these little spikes sticking out of the ground. That's also a no path available, but it's definitely easier for this first pull, I think, to get up on these rocks. Something to keep in mind here. I think in the Tyran route, what you'll do is you'll continue to use this, and you'll do a second pull back to here with a Rot Hexer, or Rotsinger, sorry. And that is the only Rotsinger you pull. And what that basically does is, again, like I was saying, you can cut out a pull on the Tyran route by making a bunch of these middle pulls a little bit bigger and adding the Rotsinger as part of that. And so by doing that, you would drop off the first totem out of range of your party on the rock, and then you would kill the second totem ASAP to prevent that. And you'd also pick up the pot like I showed you at the beginning of this area, and they would have a cleanse for that second totem if it went off, and then you would just kill the mob before the third totem happened, and that's how you would deal with the Rotsinger here. And then from here, we're now going up, and there's a couple areas how you could do the bleed reduction thing. These are the other spiked pillars I'm talking about. There's a tall pillar up here you can jump on to avoid the bleeds. This is something commonly used in the West. The West uses this one a lot. But then there's also a cave over here that you can jump on top of, which is commonly used by China. A lot of their routes use that one. So I think we're going to actually use that one today. But there is a route up here where you can grab. What I'm trying to do basically is group, but there's a Rotsinger here, and that's why I kind of pause. You're trying to avoid this Rotsinger. In every route, this Rotsinger pats around in a circle, basically. Let me back up slightly. He pats around in a circle in this area, and you never want to pull him in any of the routes. So he's here. He's going to pat around in a circle here. So ideally, I actually wanted to run across and pull all this stuff back along with this. But Rotsinger is there, and so this kind of makes me pause. And the tree is obviously coming up behind us. Party's waiting for the tree to move by. So I'm going to grab the tree so that they can move by, and I'm going to pull this stuff up to the Rotsinger, but not including the Rotsinger. So I'm not going to pull this pack over here in the corner, even though I did want to pull it. And I also see this Rotsinger pad up here, which we don't pull in this route, but you do pull in the Tyrant route, leaving. So I have to pause a little bit to make sure I get that pack. And now I'm pulling back to safety. And again, this is a pull we chose to lust on this difficulty. But again, I don't recommend doing this exactly. What you would want to do if you wanted to free up the western spot of the pillars up here is during the grouping of this pull, I would run up here and I would grab the tree, and I would also tag the mobs right here. And that would allow the entire group to run up here. And basically how you do this is the evoker has to like double jump and glide to get on top of the pillar here. I assume if you're looking how to do that, Kess is a great creator who probably has clips or can probably has something out there showing how exactly to do that. I know he had some shorts potentially. So the evoker needs to get up on there. Then they would rescue either the priest or like the mage or something. And then the priest would be able to grip either the mage or the druid. And then the last person can Wurnstone up. So between those three abilities of the evoker getting on themselves, rescuing someone, life gripping someone, Wurnstoning someone, everyone can get on this except for the tank, and that means that everyone is immune to the bleed. Like I said, though, we don't use that in this route. We pop our lust here on this scary pull because we're not using that, just to get rid of the tree as quickly as possible. And we're gonna now move once the pat is decent. So most of this big stuff is dead. Here's just some small slimes. So we have to trail. Yeah, the Rotsinger's here. I ping it. And so now we need to add this slime, and we're going to show you the cave where you can jump on top of and avoid the bleeds entirely as well. Again, just getting aggro, waiting for the Rotsinger to pat away, and then we're all going to run up here. And now at this point, the group can just run up and to their cave spot. I'm going to pull the Shapers in this cave as well as the one oak here. And then later on, we're going to chain in the guys that we didn't pull, all the other Lashers. So there you see the dragon is jumping up, and same deal here. The dragon jumps up, he rescues someone. He can Wurnstone, I believe the priest Wurnstone's up, and then the priest is going to life grip. Boom, there's the life grip. Very weird pathing on the life grip, but that's what happens. And now they're all up in safety. And they're not worried about Lashers bleeding them. They're all safe up there. And this is just a nice big pull. Lots of Lashers that we don't need to worry about anything like that. And then eventually I move up and I do tag, I believe, this pack up here that I was talking about. But we still have some things to hit. Be careful of this puddle. You see the puddle almost cheats me actually by taking all the extra damage from the puddle. So be aware of that. A bunch more Lashers come in and we just finish off this remainder of stuff. And now we're waiting for this patrol. As soon as it goes down a little bit more to the right, they'll stop and you can just walk past on the left here. You can also do the same thing on the right. So no matter which route you do, left or right, you can skip that pack. And then we go all the way up here. Our druid is already ahead. He's trying to get to the next safe spot, which I'll show you guys in a second. Basically, there's a branch up here. You'll get a better view of it later. You can pull all this stuff. And on fort, what I'd recommend you do here is actually focus the two monstrous decay slimes, kill those, and then you can chain the like less than half health oaks onto the boss. That's actually perfectly fine. But you can see they're all up here on this branch. You can basically parkour across. You jump across. The dragon can glide. The Steed Wild Charge can get you across as well. But like I said, you can also just do the same thing I was mentioning earlier, where the dragon gets up, you've got Wurnstone, you've got Life Grip, you've got Rescue, and that can get everyone up there. And you just want to make sure you're tanking in range of your Evoker, because remember, they do have short arms, so be nice to your Evoker. And we're just killing everything safe from these bleeds. Very, very easy to do. And like I said, we should have killed the big slimes here and then just chained this. And so I think we were focusing the oaks here. So that's why the oaks died basically at the same time as the big slimes. And we're going to chain these small slimes into the boss. But if we had focused the slimes, you could have chained the relatively low health oaks onto this boss, which is probably better in terms of time value. And then you get to Treemouth. Very straightforward boss fight. You know, the decay spray, just have some stop coordinated to actually prevent this cast from going off. I think it's pretty much just always a DH stop for our group because you have so many. And then from here, we alternate the Wurnstone carriers in this. You see it instantly removes. Basically, if you start casting the Wurnstone just before the Grasping Vines completes, such that it finishes after you get picked up, then you instantly teleport out of the boss. Boom, he's out of the boss towards the Evoker, and the shield instantly breaks. So it saves you some shield damage on the boss. It saves that person some damage, and you just alternate here who's doing it. So that was, I think that was the priest actually, and so now the Evoker would go in, and then I think he trades the Wurnstone to the healer, and so the third time the healer goes in, and you just kind of alternate so you don't have the damage amp buff. Yeah, watch the Vine Whip. So we usually try and put this towards the outside, and so the group was inside. We were a bit separated there, so just be careful with that. And otherwise, just kind of a rinse and repeat. By Wurnstoning out of the shield, you essentially mitigate a bunch of boss health. How much is it? Like that much boss health every time, right? So it's a not insignificant amount of boss health you completely mitigate by having the Wurnstone active there. From here, we're gonna do the skip, but like I said, there is a route that kills Stinkbreath, so we're actually waiting. Our mage swapped out to Frost, so you swapped out to Frost, and I do the skip here, because the graveyard does update after 15 seconds here. So we do that, do the skip, I jump, I meld. I think we actually pull the Gut Stabbers. Make sure you're always running to the right here. But in terms of what the Stinkbreath pull would actually be, I do have a clip of it here from the previous week we did. So this is how the Stinkbreath would be. It's not even a clean Stinkbreath pull, but this is how you do it. You'd want to wait for the first Stinkbreath for sure, because you see, I think I'm out of it. I should have just leaped and it would have been fine, but I do get hit by this first breath. It doesn't look like I'm going to hit by it, but it's like a 30, or I think it's 60 yard. It's a very long range cone. Maybe it's less. Actually, it's like a 100-yard cone. So it's a pretty long cone, so you actually do have to giga outrange it or just sidestep it. So make sure you try and bait that first one decently. And then I'm going to go grab some Gut Stabbers here. In the route, I don't actually have this hunter in the pull. I just pulled it here specifically in this one, but you'd actually want to avoid this hunter and hyena. Instead, throw this sigil around here, and this will pull the 2 Gut Stabbers stealth here. And then you can also just grab this War Scourge, and there's 2 stealth guys around him, and that's the pull. And again, you just pull it back over here, watch the Stink Breath, and usually it's pretty easy to dodge if you're not too far away. And because it does lock into place now and you can't avoid it now. We had our little mess up at the beginning of this pull, but from here it's relatively easy to just avoid everything. And there's no real damage income because you're not going to have this hunter in the pull, and that's the only guy doing random target damage in this pull right now. The Gut Stabbers really just hit the tank and don't really do anything, so it's a pretty easy pull, assuming you can just avoid the Stink Breath cone, which is not too hard to do if people play relatively close. So that is that pull here, moving along for Sanguine and stuff like that. So that's that pull. It's not too hard, and that's why I do recommend it, especially over that second pull we did. It's just not efficient in my opinion. It's not great. So we're gonna kill these Gut Stabbers. I mean, full screen again, and we're gonna go along the normal skip, running across here. Because we pulled those Gut Stabbers, we don't need the birds, but otherwise you would need the birds. So you just pull them into the boss, but we got them, so we don't need them, and we're going straight into the boss here. Boom. And the big thing on this boss is just keeping your distance from the hyenas once they've been around for about 10 seconds, because that's kind of when they can start to bite. And biting is deadly, as a lot of melee players I'm sure have been finding out. There's the start of the bite, but basically they will just bite and they will just hit the closest person. It is a fervent, right? So if you are in melee range of those hyenas, after about 5 to 10 seconds, you are now in immediate danger of being bit. So you're going to see even me, like I will play, 6 to 8 yards off of them shortly after, they're in. They're going to try and bounding leap here a little bit. And then once they're getting trapped again. You see, I move away from them. Like I'm not anywhere near them. That bite hits nothing because there's no one near them. And so that's what you need to do with these hyenas. And again, try and trap them as often as possible. You can see here what I'm doing is I'm glaving these hyenas as soon as they spawn and just trying to bring them immediately into one of these traps just to get them rooted ASAP. And again, I'm now staying a bit away from them, right? I'm not super close to them, and they're just getting cleaved down, which is nice. And I do have my stun in case they do start to bite within bite range of me. And that's pretty much this boss fight. Just manage your bites. Don't be in melee range, and try and get them trapped as much as possible using knocks and slows and things like that as needed. And then we're going to go into a pretty decently sized pull here. I do recommend actually pulling a second Rod Hexer into this pull because you'll usually have CDs for this pull, just because people will CD on pull of that boss, not really later on. So we group up everything here. We're waiting because the War Scourge is a bad pat, but I do think we should have grabbed a second Rod Hexer for sure, just because the next pull you're going to see is very dangerous. And the whole thing with Rod Hexers is basically they put out a disease on a random player, and then they'll do a kind of like siphon ability, and that does massive lethal damage, especially on higher keys, to anyone that has that disease still. So you want to dispel that disease as much as you can, and there's only one disease spell in this group, and so that's why pulling 3 can be problematic, rather, even if you have a cauldron, which you will have in the next pull. But what we want to do here with CDs, because these Rod Hexers are going to die so quickly, we only have the one dispel, but we have dwarves and we have the cleanse from the evoker, and also the ability to range the siphon ability, which is only 30 yards. So that's why I think it's good to pull 2 of these guys into this first pull, because you kill them so quickly and you can prio target them down as well, right? So that's why I recommend doing 2 into this first pull instead of just the 1. Makes life a little easier later on. Because otherwise, you see how quickly, like, these witherlings are all kind of fake, right? They're not real mobs. They just instantly die, and there's only 2 mobs here. So that's probably would have been better if there was a 3rd mob. There is a 3rd mob, I guess, in the Filth Collar, but would have been better if there was a 4th mob. And then we get to the very, very messy Rod Hexer pull, which, again, I recommend only having 2 Rod Hexers. We're going to pull up here, get kicks on these guys, or silence on these guys, pull into the War Scourge here, and that opens up this little package for the disease cleanse here, which we're going to open up, and people can play over there. To keep this clean, you need to make sure you do stop the rotting ability on the Filth Collars. It is a stop ability because this will constantly spawn the puddles on the ground, which you don't really want, so just keep stops on that. But you can see how chaotic this gets with 3 of these casters in the group. The Rotting Surge, that's what you want to stop there, because there's so many of these debuffs going out that you actually can't cleanse fast enough on the pot. And again, we only have 1 disease cleanse on our team, and we don't have CDs for this pull, so this pull lives much longer. So that's why I recommend pull the second Vile Rod Hexer into the first pull here, so that this pull only has 2. And then you have pots and you have a disease dispel to help keep on top of all the diseases going on. That's much, much easier. I think we're going to have a few deaths here just because of that, so something to keep in mind there. And then we do a big pull in this room here. There's only going to be a single Rod Hexer in this pull here. And actually, I think a lot of the roots now have cut out that 1 extra War Scourge I just grabbed. So keep that in mind. You don't actually need to pull that guy. So pull everything else over in this direction. And there is only 1 Rod Hexer right here. So this is the pull we're doing. So keep that in mind. Again, you can stop the Filth Collar, but the Rod Hexer, there is only 1 dispel. So again, we only have 1 disease dispel. We're not playing near a pot, though you can grab a pot actually by the end here. And then you can just 1 dispel. I think our Evoker went into the Rage Storm there is what happened, and very, very dangerous. But you know, it is what it is. And other than that, pretty straightforward pull. Stop the Rotting Surges, get dispels on the 1 person that has the Withering debuff. You can also invis the application, by the way, so that's something else you can do on the first pull when you only have 1 disease dispel for 2 casters. You can use invises, you can use melds, combat drops, anything like that to also stop the application of this. Other than that, we're going into the boss now. There's the boss. So now we're going to the boss. That's all our count. And this boss is all about managing your damage for totems. That is the most important thing. And so that's why our mage switched to Frost when he did after Treemouth, because Frost has a lot of damage for totems. You can do, I think, Ray of Frost, some 1-minute CD, basically, they can do every other totem. And basically what we do is we alternate Void Torrent and that ability. Again, I can't remember. I think it's Ray of Frost. Maybe it's wrong. I'm wrong, though. It's a 1-minute CD they have that they can save for every other totem. And then Void Torrent can save for every other totem. So we stagger those. So 1 totem is Void Torrent, what totem is the frost ability, and that gives us a decent amount of baseline damage. And then you've got things like, you know, the cleaving from the frost mage, as well as priest CDs when those go out. So the mage is in his CDs initially, the priest is starting to go into his CDs, and usually those CDs will cover 2 totems each. And so this totem is going to get absolutely deleted most likely because you've got both of them in CDs for this one. And then the next totem, the priest, is still going to be in his CDs, and they're just kind of managing things like that. Other damage events our team can manage is Cat Convoke from the Resto Druid. It actually has a very significant amount of single target damage as long as you make sure the boss isn't on top of the totem for when the Cat Convokes go out. Of course, there's my damage with like Fiery Brands and Elysian Decrees and stuff like that, and burst damage I can do. And then there's the evoker damage and buffing people for the totem timings, and that's exactly what you want to do. If you had like a fire mage on this boss fight, they can have SKB combustions for I think every single totem, so that's some damage as well. But I believe frost is a bit better. Maybe it could be either or, but there's always going to be some totem which you're going to have problems with in terms of CD coverage, and usually that's where you try and get lust potentially. There's also the argument, especially on fort weeks, to just lust with your CDs for more boss damage to reduce the overall amount of totems you're going to get in a boss fight, so that's something. Also trinkets. Sometimes you'll see people swap out at that Treemouth area and swap to like a Baloralos for casters or Grief Torch for tanks, for example, and you can have those very powerful damage trinkets to cover for some of these totem sets that you're weaker on. So things like that, coordinating totem damage is the most important thing. Boss positioning I've talked about a lot, so I can rewind here. Basically, you know, you point one in the corner, and then you move kind of halfway across the room to put it back into the same corner you just dropped it in. So I'm going to move a little bit here, and now this will drop it in that same corner because it's always directly across from the boss. And now, you know, we kill this totem, and then I move the boss a little bit here, and that spawns it in the safe corner, and the boss will run over here, and we get cleave on both the boss and the totem. So that's basically just rinse and repeat, doing that over and over again for the entire boss fight as a tank to get good totem positioning. But that is it for this video, guys. Hopefully you did learn something here, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it, including a ton of beta videos coming in the near future with beta launching shortly. Also, I need to give a massive shout out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for all of they do. It really does mean a lot, and I'll see everyone in the next video.